Greetings and welcome to the 2021 June and Herman Loebl Women Business Leaders Series, featuring Kamilah Williams-Kemp, Vice President of Risk Products at Northwestern Mutual. We've got a robust and an exciting event planned for you this morning, and we look forward to hearing from Kamilah very shortly. Since becoming first AACSB accredited, the first AACSB accredited Catholic school in 1928, the College of Business at Marquette University is committed to developing ethical business leaders who are inspired to make an impact in the world around them. We're also committed to supporting the causes of equity, diversity, and inclusion in the world of business. Events like today allow us to give voice to the experiences and perspectives of leadership from amazing women business leaders who have risen to the top of their field. We do so with the hopes of inspiring all Marquette business students to work towards a more equitable world. I'd like to also personally thank the family of June and Herman Loebl, whose generous support allows us to continue to bring terrific speakers like Camilla to this annual event. Before further introductions, I'd like to welcome to the screen Sister Eileen Ennis to deliver the invocation for this event. Sister Ennis is an instructor of practice in management with the College of Business and a member of the School Sisters of Notre Dame. Thank you, Sister Ennis, and on to you.
Thank you, Tim. As I reflected on the description of the presentation we were going to hear today, the image that came to mind was that of the wise woman, the healer, the bearer, the keeper of a culture. So as I reflected further on this idea of wisdom, I thought of it as the feminine manifestation of God. So I'd like to begin our reflection this morning using the description of wisdom found in the Hebrew scriptures. We read, "Wisdom, who gave shape to everything that exists, was my teacher. The spirit of wisdom is intelligent and holy. It is of one nature, but reveals itself in many ways. It is clear, clean, and confident. It cannot be harmed. It loves what is good. It is sharp and unconquerable, kind, and a friend of humanity. Wisdom moves more easily than motion itself. She is so pure that she penetrates everything. She is a breath of God's power, a pure and radiant stream of glory from the Almighty. She is a reflection of eternal light, a perfect mirror of God's activity and goodness. Even though wisdom acts alone, she can do anything. She makes everything new, although she herself never changes. From generation to generation, she enters the souls of holy people and makes them God's friends and prophets. There is nothing that God loves more than people who are at home with wisdom. Wisdom is more beautiful than the sun and all the constellations." And so we pray today. First of all, we pray in gratitude for Camillah's wisdom and her willingness to share it with us. May she be blessed. We pray that we who are gathering today will continue to discover and trust our own wisdom, and that this will make us ever stronger in the face of challenges we face, and ever more willing to take risks to create the kind of world we want. We pray for all of those who are denied access to education and to opportunities to reach the fullness of their potential. Especially we pray for young girls. May we use our power to empower them. And we pray all of this confident that we are heard by our loving God of wisdom. Amen. My next privileged responsibility is to introduce to you Ellie O'Donoghue. Ellie is a senior graduating with a finance major in the College of Business and also minoring in criminology and law studies. She is here today as the president of the Marquette Women in Business organization. Now, those few facts only begin to tell you who Ellie is. From her first year on campus, Ellie has been involved in service to the Marquette community and to the wider community. She's volunteered at Midnight Run and at the Cathedral Center for Homeless Women and Families, a ministry that she particularly cherishes. She's been involved in student government. Once she learned about Girls Who Invest, a program dedicated to increasing the number of women in the asset management industry, she couldn't wait to apply, especially since no woman from Marquette had ever been part of the program. She was chosen for the program, so immediately upon her return from a semester abroad studying in Milan, she began this experience of classwork, speakers, and visits to top finance firms in Chicago. She has served as an ambassador for the Marquette Women in Business and co-president of the Financial Management Association. She worked as an intern at JP Morgan Asset Management, adapting to the change in that program due to the pandemic, and has now accepted a full-time position with JP Morgan following her graduation. I think Ellie personifies the type of woman that we will be hearing about today, and that we strive to form here at Marquette. She takes risks to explore where her gifts can take her, but also uses those gifts to empower other women. We are so proud that she is part of the Marquette family. We thank her for all that she has given us. With great delight, I present to you Ellie O'Donoghue.
Well, thank you so much, Sister Ennis, for that great introduction. As Sister Ennis mentioned, my name is Ellie O'Donoghue, and I'm the current president of Marquette's Women in Business organization and a senior at Marquette, which is something that is really scary to say out loud with graduation approaching way too quickly. I've been lucky to be a part of Marquette's Women in Business organization since my freshman year, and my experience with women in business has been such a pivotal aspect of my time here at Marquette. In Women in Business, we pride ourselves on our mission to empower, educate, connect, and promote students to become successful leaders. Coming to Marquette as a freshman from out of state and knowing no one in the business school, I gravitated toward this organization because I loved how every single Woman in Business member actively embodied and practiced our mission statements, 4 core action words of empower, educate, connect, and promote. Since freshman year, Women in Business has provided me an abundance of opportunities to network with top business and community leaders, enhance my leadership skills, and engage in community outreach. As an upperclassman, I've been able to take an active role in planning and executing events in Women in Business, events like ones that were so impactful in the beginning of my own Marquette experience, like the speaker series. Since the inception of the June and Herman Loebl Women in Business Leader Speaker Series in 2018, this event has always been the annual highlight of my time as a Women in Business member. It has allowed me and other students in the Marquette community to interact with high-achieving and leading women who serve as role models for how we want to live our own lives and careers. In fact, I remember going to the inaugural event as a sophomore and seeing the Women in Business president at the time doing introduction of our organization and the speaker series, just like I am now. At the time, I wondered and truly doubted if I would be able to do something like this for this organization. Thus, it is definitely a full circle moment to be involved with this event in my final year, and has truly been the experiences and the people I've met in this organization that has helped me grow and be able to take on this role. Overall, Women in Business not only has provided me an ever-growing community of inspiring and extremely resilient women, but has also helped me grow from a timid Women in Business freshman member to a confident senior, mentor, and Women in Business president. Now, in his 7th year at Marquette, it is my privilege to introduce the 24th president of Marquette University, Dr. Michael Lovell.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Ellie, and thank you for all you do to make Marquette better. It is a great pleasure to be with all of you today. And, the Women's Business Leadership Speaker Series is really a gift to our entire Marquette community. And I also want to extend my thanks to the Loebl family for their generosity in allowing us to hold this event. It is a great privilege and blessing to hear from women who are thought leaders and innovators in our society, like today's speaker, Camilla Williams-Kemp. Ms. Williams-Kemp is Vice President of Risk Products Department at Northwestern Mutual. Having held several leadership roles at NM over the years, her current team drives the value of NM's insurance products through product innovation, adaptation, and competition. Ms. Williams-Kemp is a Wildcat with a BS from Northwestern University, and she also holds an MBA with honors from the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. Successful business leader with close ties to her community, Ms. Williams-Kemp is both a member and mentor at Executive Leadership Council, a global nonprofit focused on opportunities for Black executives to succeed in business. She's a valued board member of the Rogers Behavioral Health System, the African American Leadership Alliance of Milwaukee, and Rocket Ship Education. She's a true trailblazer and a business leader for and with others. It is my great pleasure to introduce all of you to Ms. Kamilah Williams-Kemp.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lovell, and really the entire Marquette team for such a warm introduction. And I am just ecstatic to join you all today. When I was first approached about this opportunity, it was an immediate yes for me. And I really welcome the opportunity to share my story in the hopes that it will encourage someone listening today to unlock new possibilities for themselves. And it was also a yes for me because I'm just so incredibly impressed with the programming that Marquette is delivering for women in business. And I'm truly honored to be a part of this series. And our goal today is really to deliver an engaging discussion, relatively informal, as best as we can accomplish it via Zoom, hoping it'll feel more like a fireside chat, certainly with some time for Q&A at the end. So I'll start at the beginning here with, last month, I was really inspired by the International Women's Day Choose to Challenge campaign. And I participated in a short video, which was shared on LinkedIn, where I described the importance of challenging how women judge themselves to get comfortable in their own skin and take some risks in pursuit of their goals. And I think there was a modest degree of risk in even making that statement, because I wouldn't want anyone to misinterpret that by focusing the statement on how women judge themselves, that in any way diminishes any of the very real barriers that women do face in achieving career success. Those barriers do exist, but my Choose to Challenge statement was a very personal glimpse into the realities of my journey and what I've chosen to challenge despite some of the external barriers, truly in pursuit of my personal and professional goals. So I'm eager to dive into this today and have just a few visuals to kind of anchor my comments. And like I said, really want to have this be as engaging as possible through this platform. So the first visual that you see here, rose-colored glasses. Over the years, I've done a lot of one-on-one mentoring, and I've had mentees say to me on multiple occasions, Kamilah, things are easy for you. You always get the spotlight. You don't really understand what it's like to struggle. And I think it is very easy to look at an executive leader's resume and the accolades through these rose-colored glasses. And please don't mistake my sunny disposition for an easy path. For all of the joy and fulfillment, there certainly has been I'll call it the far less glamorous moments than the resume might suggest. And I have chosen to press forward despite some of those challenges, it's certainly not the case that the challenges didn't exist. So the next visual I want to share with you, and if we were in person, I would ask for a show of hands on how many of you have ever felt like an outsider or an underdog. And certainly I have had that experience, and there's the obvious reason of being a woman of color, but it extends into other dimensions that aren't as obvious. And I've chosen to use that feeling of being an outsider or an underdog as a competitive advantage. And it's not about turning a blind eye to being excluded, but as I share my story today, I'll touch on how I've been able to use this sense of difference as fuel to actually build my brand as a problem solver and a people developer, and more importantly, an inclusive leader, and truly doing my part as best I can to pave the way for others to have a seat at the table. And my last visual represents the risk-reward equation. And I think that everyone knows achieving anything of value takes some degree of risk. And if the risk is framed within the context of both the risks and the reward, I do think it can help people get their heads wrapped around why the risk is potentially worth it. It's easier to think about it. Now, actually taking the leap is an entirely different level of commitment. And again, I've chosen to frame the risks, the fear or uncertainty in the context of rewards. So in the process, I've developed some confidence to jump into new opportunities. And it hasn't been an easy path, as I've already referenced, but I'll share some of the stories that put some additional color behind everything that I've shared thus far. So I'm going to take the slides down so that we can really get into this discussion. And as you heard in my introduction, I'm accountable for the product performance across all of our lines of insurance coverage at Northwestern Mutual: life, disability, long-term care, annuities. And the value proposition for Northwestern Mutual is holistic planning and bringing a mix of insurance and investments together to help clients achieve financial security and peace of mind. And while comprehensive planning is not only about our insurance products, it is not lost on me that 160 plus years of success for the company and the pride that our policy owners have in being clients of Northwestern Mutual is in large part due to the insurance products that we offer. So this is a big job that I'm in, and I'm sure you're all wondering how I got here. If I go all the way back to the beginning, I was born in St. Louis, and my family moved here when I was young. So I do consider Milwaukee home. I'm an only child and have always been rather quiet and introverted. So when I was a little girl, the idea of being in front of all of you in a venue like this would have been a huge departure from anything that I would have envisioned for myself. And if you fast forward a bit to college, I did attend Northwestern University undergrad, which was a great experience, both academically and just also I ended up going to the Rose Bowl for my senior year. It's like just an outstanding experience. Ultimately, though, I had a major that I decided I didn't want to pursue. But there was not going to be a fifth year. We scraped up enough pennies and scholarships for me to get to Northwestern. I had to finish in those 4 years, which means I really had to get creative. And I view this, of course, in retrospect now, but this was the first real test of my willingness or ability to create my own path, even when the next step wasn't obvious. And it really is a refrain that has revealed itself many times over in my career. I worked at a different insurance company for a couple of years right out of school, and then joined Northwestern Mutual, and I've now been with the company for 22 years. I started as an underwriter in our disability insurance line, and like many people early in their careers, I worked hard to prove myself. I think what differentiated me early, but wasn't obvious as a differentiator to me then, was how willing I was to learn and try things that weren't required of me or that I even had any experience with. I truly did not necessarily think I was doing anything special, but I had a great leader at the time who saw something in me, and we began talking about my career and my future and moving into a frontline manager role. And as I reflected in those conversations with that leader, it really hit me that my pursuit of a leadership role wouldn't be my first time. That similar to Ellie, as you've ascended to be the president or the head of the Women's Association at Marquette, I had all of these examples in high school, starting a multicultural club with a close friend, to being captain of the dance team at undergrad, even the supervisor of my work study job in college. And I realized that this introvert actually tended to find herself in leadership roles. And it was a bit of a confidence builder, and very important in that pursuit of some of those early career moves where I knew I would be up against people with more direct experience for those roles, but really just had a fire in my belly about being able to lean into the challenge of jumping into something new and contributing. So I suppose this is where the rose-colored glasses come in, because I never dwell too much on some of those no's that I received early, and maybe I haven't talked about that as much as I should, some of those early disappointments, because I definitely received my fair share of not yet, or the candidate has more relevant experience. And at the time, I really just kept pressing forward until I landed the first people leader role as an underwriting manager. And it was a tough team. We had high work volume and it was fast paced. There were important decisions being made every day. And when I talked earlier about the dimensions of difference, my difference in this particular role was not about being a woman or a person of color. There were some amazing Black female managers at the company at that time. So I wasn't an anomaly in that regard, but I was really young and much younger than many of the people that I was now leading. So I really focused on listening and learning. What did they really need in order to be successful? How could I help them? What were their pain points in the business process or our outcomes? And this was my first opportunity to really shape a vision, execute a plan for a team, engage them in the problem solving. So we were rallying around the issues together, and they owned the plan just as much as I did. And I still remember all of these years later, someone from that first team who actually cried during a one-on-one meeting that we had because of positive feedback I was giving to her. She previously had felt like she had been working really hard without enough recognition. And wow, did that shape the way that I approached leadership. I certainly, of course, had my fair share of tough conversations as well. But the bottom line is that I took that first team responsibility really seriously. And it was so formative to the style that I still carry with me today, to make sure that I'm focusing on both the business results and our people. So now fast forward a bit more, I was building my brand as a great people leader, and I started feeling like I needed to try something new. And at the time, there were some people around me asking, like, why would you leave an area where you do have the brand or the knowledge, the leadership support? And there very well could have been an upward trajectory within that part of the company. But I fundamentally knew that I needed to round out my experience and skills. So I took a risk and moved out of a people leader position back into an individual contributor role in a completely different part of the business. I moved to HR, where I ultimately gained great experiences with strategy and exposure and learning across the entire company. That's also when I started my MBA at Booth. So here I was in a relatively new role with a steep learning curve, traveling back and forth to Chicago for school. But the risk reward equation for me was there, right? I was really investing in my growth and development. But also during this time, I hit a really difficult personal challenge. My dad was at the tail end of his battle with cancer. Several years prior, he had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, which I think everyone knows is typically a pretty quick death sentence, but he fought it for almost 8 years. And there were just tons of ups and downs during that time. And I admittedly was in a bit of denial about his condition because he had been battling it for so long. I honestly thought he might beat it, even when he was in hospice, which of course, again, in retrospect, it was so obvious everything that was converging at that time. But I remember sitting in his hospice room with my laptop from work open, my accounting book there, trying to juggle it all. And so when you talk about grit and resilience and pushing through challenges. It's not just on the personal front, professional front. It also, there's an intersection there on the personal level as well. And ultimately, I did great work on the job. I finished the MBA with honors, and he did get to walk me down the aisle before he passed away. There's absolutely nothing easy about that phase of my life and career. And I think now, actually, I would love to share another slide, because I believe that this is an important phase in being able to kind of talk about these reflections on the intersection of my personal and professional story. So I'll pull these back up. And my husband, Jason, has been really, really supportive through all of both the professional and personal kind of trials and tribulations. I think he would be complimentary of me if he were here. There are days I think sometimes I'm a better mom or than I am a wife, or even friends at times. My closest friends tolerate me, but I know I drive them nuts with how much I work. Jason and I have two sons, Jason and Cameron. Jason's the older one. Cameron's here, pictured here as an infant. And this slide is one that I used in a presentation when Cam was still quite young. And on the right side, you see a couple of screenshots from my phone, because pre-COVID, I was traveling so much that most mornings the pop-up on the map automatically told me how long it would take for me to get to the airport. So it tells you how much I was out and about for my role. What I didn't share earlier about my childhood is that my mom really instilled in me that it was possible to both work and be a fully present parent. Admittedly, she made it look way easier than it really is now that I'm a parent, and I have that full appreciation for everything that she juggled. But that was really deeply instilled in me pretty early. And then my dad faced all sorts of discrimination at work as a Black man in Milwaukee in technology back in the 70s and 80s. You know, he never let that get in the way, though, of his advice to help me keep pressing forward. So they were both really remarkable in their own way with what they instilled in me. And because of those values, when I was pregnant with our older son and asked to go on a job assignment in a different city, I was thankful that the company didn't decide for me whether it would be the right time. You know, my family, we were in a position to make that decision. And of course, I took that leap and said yes. I figured I was returning to work after maternity leave. So what would it matter what city I'm in? So when he was about 7 months old, we picked up and moved for that 6 months. And it was an amazing experience because it did launch a different dimension of learning for me regarding the advisory side of our company while I was being a mommy. And fast forward a bit to being on maternity leave or returning from leave with little Cam, I ended up taking him with me on a lot of trips, which is of course unthinkable now with COVID to move that freely across the country with a young child. But I had a dear friend that would travel with me and take care of him while I was in meetings, and then I could be with him during my downtime. So this next picture is one that's a little bit more current, where Jason is now in the 5th grade, Cam is 3, and they really are a joy to me. I'm sharing this kind of personal side in the hopes that it gives you a little bit of a glimpse into my definition of achieving work-life balance. So the last segment that I would like to share with you all before we move into Q&A, this is the phase of my career where I was really first getting into being a leader of leaders with enterprise influence, and how I was able to take some of those early lessons from my career that I've described to you and really bring that into these expanded roles. So my first executive level position was back in 2015 when I took on leadership of the long-term care product line. And I will never forget what it was like to lead at scale like that for the first time. I couldn't have been more excited, but I immediately felt the difference The stakes had definitely been raised. I had built my whole career on taking leaps into a new domain to problem solve and lead people as authentically as I could. But this was different. This is where I did find myself in rooms where I was the only one. And not just internally, but also from an industry perspective. I remember being at a conference where people literally did not believe that I was the head of the long-term care organization. I remember being between sessions. I was with a member of my team and someone from another company. And the person from outside of Northwestern Mutual kept questioning the person I was with. Is she really the head of the line? And I thought, really, I am actually standing right here. But boy, oh boy, did I use that to fuel me. You are not going to tell me that I don't belong. And I really worked very, very hard to establish really credible relationships with people in the industry so I could make myself, I could be on the stage and make it very clear that I belonged, but truly, again, making great inroads to break down barriers for other people. I think what also was different as I was venturing into these expanded leadership roles was just the entirely new level of complexity and the impact of the decision-making that I had to get comfortable with. The weight of the decisions made in the moment that could have such a durable impact on our business. And there were so many more interdependencies than just straightforward levers to pull to get results, and really requiring systems thinking, broad strategy, and an ability to really rally a team together to execute. And the other difference that I felt right away was influence at scale. So I wanted to continue my track record of people wanting to work with me, and not just because of hierarchy alone, but because they knew that they would have an opportunity to grow and develop and contribute as we work together to solve big problems. And again, at scale, really figuring out the ways in which to engender trust, convey a compelling vision, and empower others to learn and grow through other people. This was a really, really pivotal part of my development and career. And since leading the long-term care line, I've certainly had a series of additional responsibilities added to my plate over the last several years to ultimately land in the role that I'm currently in. As of January 1, I'm leading all of the insurance product lines, and it's a huge opportunity to shape the future, working hard and loving it. And preparing for this presentation and just thinking about my career journey has really prompted me to truly reflect on my why. I love seeing the outcomes of the business decisions because of the impact beyond today. And it's also about the people. I can't meet individually with everyone, but I still invest as much time as I can for those conversations that I know will help someone in the way that leaders helped me throughout my career. And in just the last couple of weeks, I've had 2 separate conversations with minority women who landed their next dream role, in part because I helped them along the way. They did the hard work, but I was there to help support and guide as best I could on their journey. And I got teary in those conversations because it really cemented for me why I have chosen to push so hard to take some of the risks that I've taken so that I can really change the landscape of business, and take that very, very seriously. And I know my work is not done. So I am continuing on with my journey. And part of my way of giving back is to engage in this sort of conversation with all of you. So Ellie, at this point, would you like to start getting into some of the Q&A?
Yes, definitely. Well, first off, thank you so much for your amazing insight and presentation. We're going to start with a few prepared questions, but everyone in the audience, please submit any questions you may have in the Q&A chat box. We will have time to get to those at the end. But I kind of want to start off with your last segment, being a leader of leaders and finding yourself needing to support other women and people from diverse backgrounds, kind of joining the table. I remember being a freshman from out of state, knowing no one, how important it was to have faculty, peers, friends push me to go into these leadership roles. And what advice might you have for today's leaders, or even women like myself who are upperclassmen trying to work to foster inclusive workplaces for persons of color and other people from diverse backgrounds and get them a seat at that table?
Yes, so my advice to any leader looking to pay it forward and foster that inclusive workplace is don't wait for a talented person to declare what they want. Really lean into trying to identify their unique skills and how they can apply them so that you can help create those opportunities for them. And this is it's so critically important because I've seen many women or people of color, or again, other dimensions of diversity that are afraid to really declare what they want. Because if you look at it from the vantage point of not really understanding all the reasons why there aren't more women or people of color at senior leadership roles, it can cast a doubt in people's minds as they're trying to traverse through all the complexities of growing their career. Who can I trust? How bold should I be in declaring what I want? And I think for those that are looking to give back, make sure that you're tapping into talent proactively so that you can help them open those doors, and don't take it as a negative if someone isn't just willingly raising their hand all the time, because there are a lot of reasons why someone might be a little bit more reserved in declaring what they want. Really take some ownership of helping to pave that way and create opportunities for them. And I think you'll find that folks will work twice as hard for you when you give them those opportunities to really learn and grow and develop, that you've put some of that trust in them.
Yeah, and I'm sure, I know, like, as you mentioned, people who are going into leadership roles are maybe timid to raise your hand, and you talked about finding yourself kind of dealing with the weight of decisions as a leader. Have you ever found yourself kind of looking back and becoming timid or nervous about the decisions you're going to make, and how do you kind of step back and find that confidence in yourself to move forward and have trust in your decisions?
Yeah, so much of it is this balance of confidence, but also recognizing, because of the interdependencies of a particular decision, needing to tap into the expertise of the people around you, and not letting confidence turn into arrogance that you think you have all the answers, and always being open to bringing in those people who can poke a little bit at your strategy to challenge the way that you're thinking, so it sharpens how you approach the decision-making process. I found that to be incredibly valuable, to strike that balance of engaging the people who have some of that expertise while still remaining confident that we can solve just about any problem that comes our way.
And I also want to go back to kind of your discussion of your family and how pivotal they've been into your success. And we talked about some of the struggles you've had between work and life balance. And I think, especially as a young woman going into my career next year, I think I've received mixed messages about the ability to have family, ability to have a life, and ability to have a successful career as well. What advice might you have for people struggling between this work-life balance? And have you ever found a time where you had to step back and recalibrate kind of those situations?
Yes, there's a quote that I came across not too long ago, that an empty lantern provides no light, and that self-care is the fuel that allows your light to shine brightly. And I've used that quote a couple of times, both with audiences and for myself, to serve as a reminder that I need to be able to stay centered and focused. And even if I'm temporarily out of balance, really strive to make sure that I'm having that kind of self-care first. And a perfect example of this is before COVID hit, I started a wellness streak that really has been game-changing for me. I'm now at 430 days straight of at least 30 minutes of exercise. I will tell you, I didn't set out to have that long of a streak. It was just more of a day-to-day thing where I need to get up in the morning, keep myself clear-headed, have that time for myself. It's not just about the fitness per se, it's just about overall holistic wellness. So self-care is an important part of the equation. And then with the integration of kind of work and life and where I've needed to recalibrate, I gave the example of my dad and his illness. I've had situations too with my mom and being a caregiver for her. So I guess my advice is to make sure that with whatever you're faced with, and you're thinking about all the different dimensions of where you are needed at any particular time, recognize that there are going to be times when home or work may step into the forefront as a priority for you, and give yourself some grace when that happens, so that if you do need to recalibrate where you're spending your time or the support system around you, that you're in tune enough to where things might be a little bit out of balance, where you can get the support that you need.
And kind of moving on to discussion too with COVID, I know that's been our life for a whole year, and maybe people are a little irritated to hear COVID more and more. It's definitely still a reality though, but obviously that's positively changed your wellness and overall well-being. But how has it changed kind of your leadership style as well, and working in this totally virtual world?
Yeah, I think it's been an extension of my basic approach to leadership. This longstanding commitment to being engaged and connecting authentically. It is challenging though. You lose some of this humanity on Zoom. I'm trying to look you in the eye, but it's not quite the same. And my approach has been to really just start with recognizing the strain that people are under with, whether it's homeschooling, their own concerns about health and safety, the Zoom fatigue, and because at the beginning of all of this, I don't think anyone necessarily would have predicted we'd still be, in this sort of working environment. So demonstrating empathy, flexibility to accommodate what people need, and really making it a priority to listen and engage. There's no magic wand to alleviate all the pressures, but that empathy and understanding and the flexibility and the accommodations, if needed, really goes a long way for people.
And we have a lot of questions in the Q&A chat right now, so I'm going to start reading them, which is exciting. The first question is from Joshua, and he's asking, you talked about the idea of people looking at your career through rose-colored glasses and focusing only on successes. Was a significant failure that you experienced that planted the seeds for later success?
Yeah, so I am going to be very vulnerable here and share that one of the things that that bothers me is actually a more recent issue. So I think it would be easy to talk about something that happened a long, long time ago as if I don't still have challenges. So your prior question about adjusting in the COVID environment, I would say a huge win on acknowledging the people side of things. There were real interruptions to our business process at the time. I will call it at the kind of the peak of needing to adjust with COVID. I was in a role where I was overseeing the underwriting across all of the product lines, and we had a lot of incoming volume, which was outstanding, and we weren't as staffed as we needed to be in order to handle what is now like this new influx of work, really prompted from people having more, I think even more interest in making sure that they're financially secure, given everything that was going on with the pandemic. And it took a lot of effort to recalibrate our process, to get some of the technology and automations that were needed to really handle all of the incoming volume. And I won't say it was a failure, because we were able to make these adaptations, but it was very difficult. It took longer to, I will call it, recover from that situation than I would have liked. And I didn't finish it before I stepped into my current role. So, I'm certainly giving a hand to the new leader that's stepping into that role, but there's nothing like feeling, that you've actually completed something before moving on. And it still weighs on me that it's like, oh, is there anything I could have done differently to manage through that situation? And I keep telling myself that there's no playbook when there's a pandemic, and that we really did do the best that we could. I personally did the best that we could. And now things are moving in the right direction because of the path that we laid last year. But that's my most recent example of something that didn't go perfectly as I would have loved to orchestrate it all.
Yeah, definitely. COVID and the virtual aspect has definitely thrown a lot of people for a loop, I feel like. Another question we have, you talked about a lot of leaders in your life who gave you an example of where to go in. Margot asked, how would you suggest people on the call to go about recruiting a mentor? And maybe a follow-up with that is kind of showing visibility for yourself with finding these mentors.
Yes, this is a great question because, as I mentioned, I'm more on the introverted side. You probably don't believe that because of the way that I'm just talking, but I really am. And it was very difficult for me earlier in my career to be that person that would raise my hand. And the game changer for me, so my advice for those that are really looking for mentors is first off, with your work, expand your network within whatever organization that you might be in to make sure that there's visibility into the work product that you have. So finding ways to use that as an entree into conversations. Here's some of the things that I'm delivering. Here's what I'm excited about, the problems that I'm excited about trying to solve for the organization. Seeking out people who seem to have some expertise in that particular area and engaging in a conversation about how to leverage their knowledge and expertise to apply it to your current role and how that can help you grow. I know it seems pretty lofty to think about engaging a mentor in that sort of conversation, but what I've found with my peers is that myself and others very, very impressed with those who come forward with being able to articulate their magic skills and strengths and how they can be applied to the business and their willingness to learn and grow. It takes a lot of courage to send that email, pick up the phone, to engage in that sort of conversation. But for the most part, I think individuals, leaders are typically pretty open to having that kind of conversation for someone that they see has that sort of drive and fire in the belly, if you will, to keep pushing for growth and development.
Definitely. And Geraldine just asked, you talked about work and education experience. However, what kind of community involvement did you seek to round out or maybe enhance your development?
Yeah, so I have served on numerous boards along the way. And for me, it was another example of finding an intersection of where my skills might be leveraged on causes that are important to me. So even currently, I am on the board for Rocket Ship Public Schools, where we're really focused on closing the achievement gap in Milwaukee. I have a family member who had committed suicide, and just the challenge of not recognizing how deeply he needed help. And we knew a surface, but not necessarily the depth of it. That's what led me to join the Rogers board, just to help with alleviating that stigma of mental health issues. That really has to change. And then serving on the African American Leadership of Milwaukee board, clearly close cause for me. So I bring that all up because I think there's so many organizations in our city that need the expertise and the drive of those who are passionate about the causes. And I didn't start off by being on boards, right? I started off with, volunteer work and serving on committees and really contributing in that way. And it was a real win-win for me to round out my skills and being able to influence a direction or a strategy while also giving back to the community. So it's a really important dimension of development. Absolutely.
That's amazing, all you're involved in. I also had a question for your leadership style. I think when we see women leaders, we expect women to be like supportive, caring, a little motherly, but if you look at historically with literature, you see leaders being assertive, competitive, and strong, and more masculine traits. And there seems to be kind of this tension between what a leader is expected versus maybe what a woman is expected to act. Have you kind of ever found any struggle between these two expectations, and how have you kind of balanced between people expecting you to act versus how you're expected to act as a leader?
Yeah, so two parts to this answer. I've been on the side of having such a strong brand as a people leader that I've had people trying to help me by saying, you need to stop focusing on all that soft and fuzzy stuff and just get down to brass tacks. And I've had to say, look, our people are the ones that are actually going to unlock all this value for us as an organization. So back off. I do care about people and I'm going to continue to do that. But the flip side of it is, part of the reason I decided to go back and get my MBA from Booth was that I wanted to make sure it was very clear that I have the business chops and I have a balance of focusing on, articulating the strategy, understanding really complex business issues, and bringing both of that, like the skill sets to bear. So I try to think about it as I know that I need to bring both. It's not always easy to manage other people's expectations on what side of the fence of that you should be on based on your gender, your background. But I've been very intentional about making sure that both are important, even if other people's expectations are different.
That's awesome. We also have a question. What is your advice for managing when your boss is more of a manager versus a leader? So maybe when you find yourself without kind of those access to mentors, someone who maybe focus more on deliverables and not on professional development. How do you think you can start this conversation with the manager to get more of those professional development opportunities?
Yeah, so in my experience, if there's a leader where there's a disconnect on the people connection side of things, trying your best to engage in a conversation and asking questions about what pressures that team or that business unit could be under that you can help solve. So it is framing the conversation through the lens of the business challenges, if that's that leader's kind of orientation. And hopefully with repeated conversation in this space, you start to actually understand what additional pieces you can bring to the table to help round out either that leader or the team so that you're focusing on the breadth of everything that needs to be delivered. Because if there's something missing in the equation for the success of that team and only being focused so much on one part of creating the widgets, that can create all sorts of tension and challenge. Now, if that approach doesn't necessarily work and, again, raising your hand to kind of volunteer to plug any sort of those gaps that the team might be faced with and that leader's just not going to bite, sometimes you do have to find mentors that are not necessarily in your leadership chain, if you will, to help round out the other things that you might need for your development. And that could come in the form of the, community kind of giving back, as I had just described, or someone else within the organization who knows the work and could end up being an advocate for you. Sometimes those things can get tricky, admittedly, but I still try to give the leader the benefit of the doubt to at least attempt to have some of these conversations. And if that's not working, then making sure that you're expanding that circle to seek elsewhere, like where you can get some of the support that you might need to continue to grow and develop. And then ultimately you have a choice to make about what you want to do for your career. So I'll just put that in there.
And kind of following up on that, we have some questions about how do you recommend kind of advocating for yourself, but when you start seeing outside opportunities, maybe putting yourself out there and also to balancing maybe a full workload and also advocating for yourself for these outside opportunities.
Yes, this is I'm probably the worst person to ask this question because I just keep layering things on. So full disclosure, I have the streak in me that if I start to see an opportunity, I really do press for it. There's a little bit of I'm going to call it a perfection trap for me, that this idea of pursuit of goals and drive, as much as I attempt to kind of balance it all, really, I push pretty hard for myself, and I'm trying to give myself some grace. So it's an interesting question in that if you're seeing opportunities for yourself and not quite sure how it's going to fit into what you already have on your plate, I think really assessing your priorities, what steps you really believe you need to take in order to achieve your goals, and let the rest of the tactics flow from there is my best advice, because there's always going to be either a challenge around the courage to raise your hand to push, or carving out the think time and the wherewithal to really come up with a plan for yourself. And investing in that, I think, will pay dividends in the future if you can really stay centered on tapping into what it is that you really want to accomplish, a pivot that you might need to make to grow yourself and your skills. And then, like I said, letting the tactics flow from there. Every time one of these questions comes up, it's like, oh, I just want to talk to the person and find out more about what they're dealing with so I can help them and give more specific advice. But I'm hopeful that this is helping in some way.
This has definitely been incredibly helpful. Unfortunately, we are nearing the end to our program. I'm sure I could talk to you forever. I'm sure all these questions go forever, but I just want to thank you so much for coming today, speaking to us. You are an incredible role model for myself, and I'm sure other women on this call, and incredibly inspiring. And now I'd love to turn over to Dean Hanley for concluding remarks.
Wow. That's all I can say. Ellie and Camille, that was just fabulous. And yeah, we could have kept this going for another hour easily. And I know the rest of the audience, Mike, you had to love it as well, was just as inspired as I was. So I want to say a great big thank you to the two of you. I think you were just outstanding. Ellie, it's really clear you're going to have a career just like Kamilah's in the not too distant future. So thanks for being such a terrific moderator. And we really appreciate the insights, Kamilah, your story. And by the way, you've got a big journey ahead of you, which is really so exciting. And just can't thank you enough for spending this hour with us and sharing all of your learnings with everyone on the call today. I was looking at a few of the questions we didn't get to, and it just showed what sort of engagement you had with the audience. And by the way, this is the kind of high bar we want to set for the rest of our audience. This is what Mike and I are trying to do here at Marquette. We're trying to have leaders like Kamilah and future leaders like Ellie in front of all those that care a lot about Marquette. We've got audiences here that are students, they're faculty, they're business leaders here in town. And again, what we're really working to do is have things that are inspirational. Kamilah, your story is just so inspirational to so many of us that were listening. I was scribbling notes myself during the conversation because I'm only 64 and I have a lot to learn myself. So thank you so much for that. And again, I think once again back to thank the Loebl family. I mean, these are the kind of experiences that the June and Herman Loebl Women's Speaker Series is going to have in the future, but that bar is going to be even higher now, Kamilah, because of the terrific insights that you shared with us. So I just want to thank everyone a ton. Ellie, terrific job in the moderation. For all of you, please stay tuned. What Mike and I want to do is continue to bring these kind of insights to you for months and years to come. So Kamilah, thank you. Ellie, Mike, any closing comments from you?
I just want to provide, my thanks to both Camilla and Ellie and everyone who was involved. Is again, like yourself, I'm still learning, and it's great to bring in people that we can learn from. And I'm inspired as well.
Well, listen, everyone, thank you very much. Stay tuned for more from us here at Marquette and the College of Business. Sister Eileen, thank you for kicking us off, and we hope to see all of you very soon. Thanks much.